Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda and I am here with my September reading wrap-up. If you hear something in the background, that is adventure time. The kids have turned it down, so we're doing the best we can. Anyway, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I will get to the specifics later, but there's one part of my wrap-up that's going to be in a different video, and I'll explain that as we get there. So, month of September, I read 13 books, which is great. My goal is always kind of to shoot for 12 books a month, so 13 is fabulous. And I didn't DNF any of them. What's really exciting is my average rating is 4 stars, or an A, which is the first time that has happened, that I have broken that ceiling in my ratings, my average monthly rating. So, yay. Now, of the 13 books I read, 5 were in print, 7 were ebooks, and 1 audiobook. If you've been following my channel, you know what audiobook was because it took me almost the entire month to listen to it. So for genres, 4 of the books were historical fiction, 4 were mystery, and 4 of those would three of those 4 mystery novels would qualify as classic novels. 2 were contemporary fiction, 1 was a horror novel, 1 was technically a mythology retelling, although it kind of felt more like historical fiction because there was no supernatural element to it, but I put it under mythological retelling as it was. And then I had 1 other book that I listed as a classic with no other genre, which means I would have had 4 classics because it didn't really fit into any other ones. It would have been a contemporary fiction when it was published, but it was published at a very specific time, which makes it kind of historical. So I said, I'm not going to split hairs. I'm just going to call it a classic. Now I'm going to go through the books, and as usual, I'm going to do it by the grade that I gave them, starting at the bottom and working up. So the first book, the one that got the lowest grade, is going to be a little controversial because I know I'm in the minority on this, and that is Hester by Laurie, Lico, Albanese, and I gave this a C+. Basically, this just wasn't a book for me. I read this as part of Krueger's Scarlet Summer, so we did The Invisible Hour, where also I'm in the minority. I really like that one. But I also read Scarlet Letter. And when it comes to kind of like prequels, retellings, things like that of other works of literature, I don't like it to be really on the nose. And this book was really on the nose. I just realized my camera is a little crooked. Okay. So it was just sort of, things I don't really like that showed up in that book. Now, had I read this when I hadn't, very shortly before read The Scarlet Letter, I might have had a different rating for it. But it is what it is. I had 1 book that I gave a B to, and that was Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. And thanks to Mariandra for telling me how to pronounce it, Xochitl. This is for my book club. We'll be discussing it next week. It was one of those cases where there's 2 storylines and I liked one but didn't like the other. And there were things I really liked about this book, and there were things that just didn't work for me. So it kind of is, the B is sort of like an average grade of a lot of different elements in that book. Now, for B+, I had 2 books, and this is actually really interesting because they're both by Agatha Christie. One is 3-act tragedy, and one is Death in the Clouds. Now, the reason why it's interesting is it's a B+ grade, and for 3-act tragedy, that's kind of like it was elevated up to a B+ because there were some elements of the book that worked really well for me that probably took a book that would have been a B and moved it up to a B+. And in Death in the Clouds, it was a book that probably would have been an A, but there were some things that irritated me and it brought it down to a B+. So they kind of both came in that way. 3-act tragedy the mystery I didn't think was as original or as interesting, but we finally got, and I was irritated by the fact that there's not a lot of Poirot in it. But the last book of Poirot, he was in it. It was Murder in the Orient Express, but there wasn't a lot of Poirotness, and this had a lot of Poirotness, so I really liked that. And with Death in the Clouds, it's a great mystery, lots of great Poirot, but there's some really annoying characters in it. So I was like, So it's a case of one was elevated and one was deducted down to a B+, and they kind of met in the middle. Now, I have 4 books that I gave an A to. And this is the first time this is going to happen. I have 2 books on my list that were actually short stories, but they weren't part of an anthology. They were published separately on their own. So they are considered books by my spreadsheet. And the first one is The Wehrwolf by Alma Katsu. This was a Kindle single. So you can get it on Amazon for your Kindle, or you can get an audio version through Audible, but that's the only place you can get it. Amazon does a lot of these with really well-known authors, short stories. I have read one by, I've read one by Cheryl Strayed. I know I have one by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read a bunch of them. This one was really effective. Alma Katsu, it's a World War II story, but she uses the form of a fairy tale to make her point, which is about radicalization, and it was written in response to January 6th. The next book I gave an A to was The Witness for the Prosecution and Other Stories by Agatha Christie. Short story collections are usually A books for me. This one, I will say, I did not read the whole book. I only read the stories I hadn't previously read. So I have read everything in it. It's just that some of the stories I had read in other anthologies before that. And then I had The Rachel Incident by Carolyn O'Donoghue. So this was a really fun book. It was kind of like a deeper episode of Will and Grace, but it's also kind of a book that's not going to stick with me. So it was, I have a fly going around. It was enjoyable in the moment, but the moment has passed once I closed the book or returned the book to the library. It's not a book that's going to stick with me, although I did enjoy the experience of reading it. And then finally, my final book that I gave an A to was The Secrets of Hartwood Hall by Katie Lumsden. This was a really great story. I enjoyed the story. The story was fantastic. It didn't have the flowery Victorian language, and Katie Lumsden's style is a very clear writing, which I wish it was a little bit more flowery because that would kind of fit the story a bit more. But I still really enjoyed it. And then I had 4 books I gave A pluses to. The first was the mythology retelling, which really kind of feels more like a historical fiction, and that's Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati. It's about, obviously, Clytemnestra, who she was the wife of Agamemnon. I almost said Armageddon. Agamemnon, she's in history and in myth, she's considered a really evil character, and this really humanizes her. And then the next one was my classic, where I couldn't put anything, didn't fit in any other category, and that was Address Unknown by Katherine Kressman Taylor. This story was originally published in 1938, and it's about 2 friends who had emigrated to the United States from Germany during or after World War I, but now in 1938, one of them, the non-Jewish one, had moved back to Germany, and it's an epistolary model between the 2 of them, and it's very chilling. Because it shows radicalization. And it also, someone brought up the fact that it really shows, because this book was written by an American woman in 1938, a woman from Portland, Oregon, by the way. And it's pretty clear if this story came out, they knew what was going on. The excuse that no one really knew what the Germans were doing with the Jews, we had no idea, that is not true. If that were true, this story wouldn't exist. So it's very chilling, very good. And then my audiobook, Tom Lake by Ann Patchett, fantastic, narrated by Meryl Streep. Highly recommend it. I listened to it a chapter at a time, like a chapter a day, which is why it took me, it probably took me an entire month because I actually started it in August, but yeah, really enjoyed it. It was well worth the time and really, really good. Ann Patchett doesn't always work for me, but this one really did work for me. And then finally, and I do want to explain this one a little bit, it's The Locked Room, which is the 14th Ruth Galloway book by Elly Griffiths. And I didn't give it an A+ because of the mystery. There is a mystery in it. I thought it was a little bit predictable. What I gave this for is that this is a pandemic novel, and it is the first pandemic novel that I've read, and I've read a handful. It's the first one that I've read that really kind of evoked that pandemic feeling. The other books I've read was kind of like looking at the outside. Oh yeah, I remember that. It didn't get the emotions to it. The Sentence is one of my favorite books, which is a pandemic novel. And you're able to safely, it's like a safe book for me for the pandemic. It might not be for everybody, but The Locked Room really brought forth that pandemic stress. And it was so evocative that I felt like I couldn't go lower than an A+ on it. that's, and I think that's the highest I've given any of the books in this series. And then finally, my fourth 5-star book of the year, fantastic book, and that is The River We Remember by William Kent Krueger. This is historical fiction / literary mystery. It's set in the 50s in a small town in Minnesota, where the richest and most unliked man in the town is found dead, and the Native American man who has a Japanese wife is the one who's blamed, who's suspected of it, and it's what happens in the town and solving out what really happened. Fantastic book. William Kent Krueger gets better with every book. He's amazing. I'm a stan. I'm a William Kent Krueger stan. So let me go through my stats. My reading goal for the year is 144 books, so 12 books a month, and I'm at 141. That is, and I'll get down to it before, but that's 33 books ahead of schedule. So next year I should probably be raising that a little bit. So my owned TBR is currently at 826. That includes print, digital, and audiobook. That's up 15 from last month and up 16 from January 1. 217 of those books are print books, and that is up 15 from last month. But my ebooks are 530, which is down 2 from last month. So at least I'm going in the right direction. And I don't specifically count. I mean, in the big count, I include audio, but I'm not that worried about the number of audiobooks I have. They're just there. And I'll get to them as I get to them. I'm not worried about them, at least not at this point. Okay, so let me go in because we're at the end of the third quarter. I'm gonna do a quick check-in on my goals. So my first goal was to, I don't even remember because it's completely moot at this point, was to reduce my own TBR, my print owned TBR by a certain amount. And I have already failed miserably at it. It's out the window. That goal is not going to be met. I failed. I'm doing better with my other goals. So the next one is my Goodreads goal. As I said, it was 144. It was 144 for the year. I'm at 141. That is 33 books ahead. I may meet that goal this week. I'm definitely going to have met it by the end of the month, but I may actually meet it this week. And then my last goal for the year was to have the percentage of books I read be own voices books, at least 30% of them. And I'm currently at 32.6. So I'm doing really well on that one too. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Now, as far as the other part of this, I always talk about whatever booktube events I did in the month, and I did Short Story September. I am not going to include a wrap up of that here because I'll be doing that in a separate video, which I am probably going to tape in just a few minutes. And you'll see it probably on Thursday. So that was my September. I am taping this on October 1st, so we are fully in spooky season. Exciting stuff. If you made it this far, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Both of those really help me in the mysterious YouTube algorithm mystery black hole thing. And then also, feel free to join my Discord. The information is down below. Discord is a lot easier to have conversations it's easier than the comment section in YouTube to have conversations on Discord, and I would love to have you join me there. So information is down below. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.